Hi, welcome back to the shed for episode 3 of the Jurgs cup build. And this time we're going to take that great big slab of wood that we glued up last time and turn it into something that looks a whole lot more like a guitar. Last time we got all of this wood cleaned up, thicknessed and glued together. It's been sat in the clamps for a little bit longer than I wanted to. It's actually been in a couple of days because I've just been really busy, and I'm hoping that these blocks of wood haven't stuck to the rest of it too badly and then we can get it all to pieces fairly easily. But the time's come to get it out of the clamps, and then we can look and see how much work we need to do just to get it cleaned up a little bit. That's encouraging. Oh, that's not too bad at all. Thankfully, I think the wood was a little bit mucky and dusty, and that's kind of prevented it from sticking too much. Beautiful. Get it out of these and we'll see how we've done. Now that's sat nicely on my bench, which is pretty square and flat, so that's quite a good sign. And looking at that, there's a little bit of a hump in the middle, but it's not actually that much. And the other side again, not too bad at all. I'm not actually going to do much work at all in straightening this up as it currently is. I'll wait until I've got the body kind of roughed out. There's no point in straightening up material that's not actually going to be on the final build. So all I'm going to do for the time being, I'll stick my bench stop in, and I'm going to get a nice sharp card scraper and just start getting this glue residue off. And we can see how we've done with these joints. And hopefully you can see there, the joints are nice and tight. There's no gaps or anything. They all look really nice. Just need a little bit of cleaning up really. So with that done, the next thing we need to do is we're going to need to mark out the body shape with a template. So that means we need to make a template. And you might remember from the first episode of this series where I traced out the shape of the guitar from a photograph in Inkscape. Well, I've saved it to a PDF and then I've printed it out. And the handy thing is PDF will let you print in poster mode, which means you can print it in multiple sections and then piece it all together when you're done. Now, when I don't know how well you can see that because it's very bright and the camera doesn't seem to be picking it up too well. But when I first printed this out, I thought, my God, that's huge. But then I put my precision base on top of this drawing just to kind of get an idea of whether it is too big or not. And it all seems to be pretty much in scale. But there is a way of testing this, of course, because I do have some of the components. And if I drop that on, that looks to be pretty much spot on. So that's good. And the other component I have, which actually isn't the right one, so it will be ever so slightly different than what's on the plan, is the control plate. This is actually a Jaguar one, so it is ever so slightly different, but it is roughly the right shape. And those two components together kind of give me an indication that I'm in the right ballpark size-wise. So that's beautiful. So we'll get those out of the way. And we can start to get this trimmed up and glued onto the MDF so we can make a template. And handily, when you print this out in poster mode, it gives you some trim marks. So you can align everything absolutely perfectly. Okay, so that's the 4 bits of the plan trimmed down. So next up, I need to get some PVA wood glue onto this bit of MDF and use that to stick these down nice and securely. Leave that for a few hours to dry up and we can start cutting this template out. Okay, so that's the template stuck to the MDF. That's going to need to dry for a little while before we can do anything else with it. That might look like a bit of a faff. It might look a bit tricky and complicated. If you've ever done any wallpapering, you can do this. It's fairly straightforward. There's a couple of places where it's maybe 1 millimetre out, but all in all, I think it's gone very well. But we'll leave this for an hour or so just to let the glue to dry, and then we can trim it to shape and then start to get our body made. Okay, and that is the template kind of sorted out. Didn't take that long really, probably about 15 to 20 minutes to cut that out and to sand it into shape. Once you've done a few of them, it kind of comes a bit more naturally. But having cut it out, I'm kind of looking at it and thinking, Still not sure about the size. Have I messed this up somehow? Because it looks absolutely ginormous. So, to check this out, I've got a Stratocaster template, and yeah, it's a little bit bigger, but actually not that much bigger. So I am actually happy with what I've got here as being the correct size. So we will go with this. And having established that, we can get the body blank back onto the bench, and then we can just look at the best way to lay this out in terms of how it's going to fit onto the blank, and if we can get rid of any of the manky bits of the wood that we don't want. And thankfully it fits, which is always a good start. Now, looking at this, I think I can miss out quite a lot of knots if I position this carefully, or have the knots in places where it's less important, because they'll either be covered or cut out. There's one there, but the neck pocket will take care of that. It's hard to see. There's one there, that will be covered by the pick guard. There's one there that will also be covered by the pick guard, which only really leaves a couple of little tiny ones there and there. So all in all, I think that's actually a really, really good outcome. I know I said that I don't really care about the knots too much, but if I can have as few as possible, I think that works best for me. So I'm going to set this up a little bit more precisely. I'm going to make sure that the center line of the template is on this central joint of the wood, just for simplification. We'll get this marked out properly, and we can get to the bandsaw and start cutting again. Okay, with that properly marked out, we can get this over to the bandsaw and get it trimmed down. Okay, so that's the shape cut out and then sanded to shape on the disc sander and the bobbin sander. Now normally people route these to a template, and that's something I do too, but in this instance I'm not that bothered about it being an absolutely perfect reproduction of the shape of the Fender guitar, and I got the outline for my template by blowing a picture off the internet up, so it probably isn't going to be 100% accurate anyway. So for me, that method of doing it is just as quick, just as accurate, and to be honest, there's so much lesser risk of blowing out than if you're pattern routing them. So for me, that's a viable way of doing it. Next up on this is we need to put the round over on, and I'm going to put quite a substantial round over on, kind of reminiscent of a Stratocaster, because this has also got to have the contour carves put in for both the belly and the forearm. So there's still quite a bit of work to do just to get the basic shape of this sorted out. But before we can do that, there are a couple of areas that I do need to address, because much as I tried to keep the nail holes out of the wood that we're going to be using, there are a few. There's one just here on the kind of heel of the guitar. There's another one just up here, and then there's one that runs through this top horn. They're not major, but they are there, and I want to sort them out before I put the roundovers on, because the last thing I want is the bearing to drop into one of those holes and cause some damage that I don't want to the body. So I'm going to fill those first, and all I'm going to do is, I've just got some sawdust and I'll bang some tight bond into that, make a little paste, fill the holes up. Now this filler should be something very much like the colour of the wood, but to be honest I'm not that concerned, because this guitar will be having a sunburst finish, so this bit around the edge will end up with some pretty dark paint on it, which will hide any imperfections such as these. So that just needs a couple of hours to harden off. We can get it sanded down and then move on with getting the roundovers done. However, this episode's getting a little bit long now, so I'll leave that until next time. So as always, don't forget to hit that like button if you've enjoyed this, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.